A Buddhist Lama had been practicing in a calm, scenic retreat away from people for several years. After achieving a very high state of consciousness and having many amazing experiences, he went to see his guru. The guru was joyful, grinned gently in encouragement, and then instructed him to perform sadhana for another 3 months. The location would be somewhat different this time, a dark cave teeming with snakes, scorpions, and other nocturnal creatures. Normal meals would not be accessible. The actual cave was situated far from civilization. The disciple arrived there and meditated. By nightfall, a powerful thunderstorm began, and in the pitch black of the night, the wind began to make odd noises. The Lama was already having trouble concentrating. He occasionally felt odd animals scurrying across his body. He heard a nearby tiger's blood-curdling cry, and a huge bolt of lightning struck all at once. There it was. He dashed out of the cave and continued to run down the slope until he arrived at his guru's house, where he admitted that he was unable to go on. What one may experience or achieve in a comfortable environment may not be sufficient to withstand the psychological turbulence in an unstable atmosphere. A true renunciate is the one who remains composed under all circumstances and keeps his mind fixed on the goal. The path of Aghori develops from this idea and hence involves the most repulsive, impure, and seemingly immoral acts, amidst which the sadhak tries to become one with reality. The Sanskrit term Aghor comes from adding the prefix to ghor. Means negation and ghor meaning intense or deep. Aghor therefore symbolizes a style of life where a person of the Aghori tradition doesn't have intense or deep feelings. It does not distinguish between various emotions and seems to be indifferent to the various stories of life. The Aghoris are believed to be descended from earlier Shaivite ascetic orders. These ascetics considered themselves to be Shiva's cattle and believed Shiva would assist them in freeing themselves from the bondage of the earthly realm. Aghori is the one who follows the path of the Aghor, a path of evolution and spiritual realization that starts from the most animalistic, grossest aspects of the human being and stage after stage evolves into what can be called a liberated soul. They stand for the left-handed route to salvation or Vampanthi. The Dakshinpanthi or right-hand path is its opposite and comprises universal spiritual practices like meditation, prayer and bhakti that were taken from the early Vedic writings. The Vampanthi, on the other hand, stand for peculiar habits that are sometimes viewed by society as inappropriate and even immoral. Their ceremonies are frequently contrasted with Western occultism, cannibalism, sadhana utilizing human skull, animal sacrifices, alcoholism, and sexual gratification are just a few of the eerie rites and behaviors that an Aghori sadhu is known for. These aspects also distinguish them from other Hindu sects. Because these sadhaks often do not care about anything but the ultimate, they are often disinclined to act as per the conventional spiritual role. In his book, Aghor at the Left Hand of God, Robert Svoboda mentions a description of Aghori as described by his guru Vimalananda. An Aghori is beyond the bound of the earthly shackles, something above the elements which shape the universe. He takes a sort of intoxicant and thus gets intoxicated in supreme love, which emanates from the innermost recesses of his heart. It is that which is beyond awareness. He gives off the best part of love, part of the supreme universal love where one experiences with the help of perception all in one and one in all. He merges with his own deity so that he becomes him. That is why he is said to have gone from darkness to divine enlightenment. This is an Aghori. Dattatreya, a divinity represented as an ascetic with the 3 heads of Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva, is believed to be the founder of Aghori tradition. He is shown together with 4 dogs that represent the 4 Vedas. He He has in his hands some objects of spiritual meaning: Kamandal, or the water pitcher; Japmala, or the rosary; Damru, or drums; Trishul, or trident; Shankar, or shell; and Sudarshan, the disc. Going by historical records, today's modified form of Aghori tradition can be traced to Kinaram, an ascetic who is said to have lived 150 years, dying during the second half of the 18th century. He is considered as an incarnation of Shiva, an embodiment of their philosophy and way of life. While undergoing severe sadhana in the Girnar mountains of Gujarat, he had a vision of Lord Dattatreya and attained divine wisdom. Baba Kinaram established an ashram in Varanasi and spread the way of Aghori. He opposed the tyranny of local rulers and taught people to rise above caste, creed, and sectarian views. A precise historical map of the Aghori sadhus is challenging to create. The scant information is derived from tales from the 18th century in Britain and sources from medieval Persia. In addition, their philosophy of life occasionally crosses over into other mystical systems, borrowing some of their meditational practices and fusing them with others. Some Aghoris have also had gurus who practice Islam or other religions. Despite this, there have been times when this specific family of sadhus has been particularly numerous, representing an old custom. Irrespective of what one believes in, death is certain, and it is indeed the greatest miracle of nature or Maya that we live most of our life unmindful of this fact. People go around knowing this fact in theory, but in practice, they live like death will not touch them. An Aghori tries to live with dispassion towards life by ensuring that he constantly remembers the inevitable end. The mind then instead seeks that which is changeless and permanent. This indeed inspires their practices. The meditation on the dead body, cannibalism, and other such extreme rituals are in a way symbolic reminders of death and its nature. Remaining calm and indifferent while embracing repulsiveness shows the level of detachment with senses that the human mind is capable of. Another aspect of the philosophy is that it completely transposes the opposites of purity with pollution and morality with immorality in an effort to fully subdue the ego and to transcend even the cosmic order. This form of worship takes many forms, ranging from the most complex purification and visualization techniques to the most extreme sexual and potentially polluting practices. The Aghori of the Kinaram lineage emphatically state that the term does not refer to a particular group or religion. Instead, they assert that Aghori is a spiritual state of non-discrimination that is free of hatred, fear, and aversion to anyone or anything. There is no evil. Everything emanates from Brahman, so how could anything in this universe be impure? This is the kind of philosophy the Aghoris follow. According to them, everything is the manifestation of God itself, so everything is pure. So abandoning anything is like abandoning God itself. Sadhana, which means spiritual path, refers to all practices, ceremonies, and austerities that are carried out consistently and deliberately in order to achieve moksha. It is a mental act of amplification and purification that results in self-realization. The Aghori sadhana varies in that it doesn't seem pious or spiritual. Instead, the reverse is true. The Aghoris, who live on cremation grounds, smear their bodies with ash, eat decayed flesh, plucked off corpses waiting to be cremated, wear long matted hair, and consume their own feces, pee, and vomit, imitating their ancestors. Even though their fascination with the dead body appears unethical, from their perspective, they perceive Brahman in everything. They train themselves to feel at ease while meditating even in the most revolting circumstances. Many Aghoris walk around naked, symbolizing the genuine human form and their separation from mortals, who in their view exist in the world of illusion. They are able to transcend human emotions like love, anger, envy and pride by doing this. They hold that a true Aghori should sever all links with their families, friends, and all material things, spend their entire lives at the crematory, and only eat and drink from human skulls. In addition, they use physical rituals and techniques to stimulate the body's energy centers. The 5 substances known as the Pancha Makaras, also known as the 5 M words, are employed in Aghori tantric practice and are thought to increase the amount of energy in the body's power centers. These are Madhya or wine, Matsya or fish, Mansa or meat, Mudra or parched grain, and Methun or sex. While becoming enlightened and one with the ultimate is the ultimate goal of rituals, one might also acquire tremendous natural powers by engaging in them. Numerous tales of Aghori sadhus performing miracles, superhuman feats, and even healing have appeared in Indian folklore. These ceremonies are frequently rejected by society because they are seen as extremely dangerous. Because of this, Aghori practices are highly esoteric and confidential in nature, and only a highly knowledgeable teacher can impart them. Vama Tantra and Aghor Sadhana focus primarily on breaking taboos and transgressing norms. This idea has become the mainstream explanation for why some sadhanas are performed, yet it is often exaggerated and frequently leads to the condemnation of the practices as immoral. These opinions are primarily those of a non-initiate who gives these activities a banal and shallow interpretation. True sadhaks are not concerned in the slightest about social norms or taboos. The spectator could only generate judgments that were consistent with the values that were understood in their consensus reality approach without awareness of the complex inner dynamics of the tantrics. The sole rational explanation for crazy and taboo-breaking acts is thus provided to the public rather than the intricate process being understood. From the practitioner's viewpoint, this would be a relatively unimportant interpretation. There have been those who entered this route because of an attraction to the exotic, only to ruin everything for themselves. However, it is also true that spiritual corruption is not a luxury reserved only for Aghoris. Every path has its risks. In truth, the Aghor path is not about black magic or engaging in immoral behavior. The objective is to become enlightened, knowledgeable, and one with Brahman, the supreme reality. The majority of customs and rituals are purely symbolic in nature and represent the philosophy of remaining unaffected even when under extreme discomfort. Additionally, it would be nearly impossible to gather bodies and other items for the rites. Some Aghor members even own homes and enjoy quite ordinary lives. The traditional path of Aghor has been modernized in order to strike a balance between extreme radical rituals and social acceptability while preserving the underlying intellectual premise. Aghori behavior transcends morality. The joint efforts of society have led to the development of morality as a normative concept. Aghoris desire to live without the restrictions of society, hence they are by definition not subject to its rules. The lifestyle of an Aghori may very well overlap with what is considered ethically or legally acceptable, because social standards and even our laws have developed from universal moral intuitions. Furthermore, from the perspective of an Aghori, human minds simply categorize actions into good, bad, moral, and immoral categories. In nature, there's no such classification. Nothing is intrinsically good or terrible. Everything is merely there. Even death is not awful, nor is a lion killing a deer or a natural disaster like an earthquake or flood. Everything simply serves its intended purpose as a component of the ultimate. Despite leading such an odd and bizarre lifestyle that includes cannibalism, immorality, ribaldry, and scrupulous behavior, they are nonetheless regarded as beings who are able to overcome all obstacles to attain the highest state. Aghoris believe that in order to see the illuminating light of God, one must first accept what is real and pass through the world of darkness. They don't intend to hurt anyone else when engaging in such a lifestyle. It's just the mindset with which they approach life and all of its possibilities. When we examine society's reality, we discover a number of injustices and inequalities. A few examples are the wealth disparity, discrimination based on caste, class, gender, and sexual orientation, the loss of respect and dignity for a group of people, various forms of deprivation, etc. The power of death as a shared human experience that eliminates socio-economic disparities is reflected in the cremation grounds. In the Shamshan, everyone burns in the same manner. There is equality. No matter what caste, class, or gender a person belongs to, they are welcome at the Aghori sect. All they require is a resolute attitude and an inspiring teacher to lead the student. This was one of the factors contributing to Aghori's widespread acceptance and even veneration by the ordinary community, despite their perception by upper caste individuals as filthy or tamasic. Worship, sacrifices to the goddess, and rituals that call for a partner in order to advance spiritually together give women and the feminine force of nature more significance. Aghoris subsist on leftovers and gifts. The ceremonies can be carried out by anyone, regardless of wealth. Because of this, the cult of Aghori questions the traditional ideas of caste, class, and gender inequity through its ideology. It prepared the path for social reform that has been inspired by spiritual principles as opposed to legal ones. Aghori tries to emulate Lord Shiva, the ultimate, the divine, through his unorthodox and radical practices. As the Ganges fans from heaven to earth through the matted locks of Shiva, the Aghori makes water miraculously flow from his hair. Like Shiva, who ingested the poison which emerged from the churning of the oceans and thereby allowed creation to proceed, the Aghori is a swallower of poison who liberates the blocked-up fertility of a woman. He shares many traits with his idol, like being a master of evil spirits and being touched with insanity. He adorns his body with the ornaments of Shiva and is acknowledged to be Shiva. The Aghori transforms into the Lord of Forgetfulness during the Chakra Puja ritual, holding his companion in a deathless hug. The skull he carries associates him with Shiva's terrifying manifestation, Bhairav. His familiars are dogs, which are scavengers of the crematory like the Aghori. There's no denying that the stakes for falling short on Aghori's route are significantly higher. It is not meant for the masses and can never be mainstreamed. Those who accept life as it is without passing judgment are the true Aghoris. They become habituated to things that most people would consider immoral, revolting, and evil. With the idea of non-rejection rather than with compassion, they make friends with the dark, the mystical, the awful, and the magical. Experiencing life the way it is and not being driven by good or spurned by bad is what makes them revolt against the moral orthodoxy that pertains throughout society. My beloved, if on one side of a balance are kept all the religions, sacred places and practices, and on the other is placed the science of Kaula Tantra, this latter would prove heavier than all. From the Kularnava Tantra. Tantrobhilashi Sadhu Shango, a classic tantric text, mentions a curious individual who, in the pursuit of understanding Tantra and its mystic processes, embarked on a 12-year journey across India. Carrying a pen and papers with him, he sought out mystics of the tantric persuasion, interacting with them and documenting and sketching his experiences.
Initially skeptical, yet driven by profound curiosity, his quest led him to the revered Mahishamardini temple of Bakreshwar, a renowned Shakti Peeth. At Bakreshwar, nestled within a cremation ground where extreme forms of Tantra sadhana were performed, he encountered an enigmatic figure, an Aghori who came from southern India but lived in the cremation ground. He consumed a meal once every 3 to 4 days, consisting of rice mixed with the cerebral matter found in the skulls of burnt corpses. Revered yet feared by those around him, he commanded respect as the guardian, the lord of that place, as if Lord Bhairav himself. The seeker, eager to learn more about him, patiently awaited the right moment, the auspicious night of Amavasya, the new moon. Intrigued yet apprehensive, the seeker observed as tantric practitioners, including the Aghori, gathered for a spiritual practice under the cloak of darkness, their faces illuminated by the flickering light of oil lamps. As he watches from the shadows, the night unfolds like a scene from a surreal dream. This clandestine worship, shrouded in mystery and secrecy, unfolded within a sacred circle, where practitioners, with their sexual partners, irrespective of social status, united in a harmonious synergy of power and devotion. With each ritualistic act, from the consumption of consecrated meat and sanctified alcohol to the recitation of mantras, the seeker bore witness to a deep transformation within the circle. There's an air of anticipation, of something profound about to unfold. And then it happens. A flash of lightning splits the sky, illuminating the cremation ground in an ethereal glow. In that moment of divine revelation, the Aghori is transformed before his eyes. He appeared not as a mortal, but as Lord Shiva himself, adorned with serpents and accompanied by his divine consort Parvati and surrounded by his divine attendants. Overwhelmed by the transcendental experience, the seeker fainted, awakening the following day to the realization of the immense power he had witnessed. The next morning, in a humbling exchange with the Aghori, the seeker learned the profound truth of Kaula Tantricism, that God or Shiva permeates every aspect of existence, even within the seemingly impure and mundane. God is within everything. God is everything. What exactly is Kaula Tantricism? The term Kaula originates from Kala. Kala is a Sanskrit term that translates to a part or portion of the whole. The third verse of the Shiva Sutra says, Yoni Vargaha Kala Shariram. Adi Suyash, in his insightful commentary, Threads of Transcendence, Decoding Shiva Sutras and Mastering the Science of Being Free, translates it as, everything that came forth from the universal vagina of the Divine Mother are parts of a single body. And he further explains it, just as our hands, feet, brain, lungs, and heart came forth from our mother's vagina, a multitude of parts found their beginning, all tracing back to a shared origin. Yet all of these are parts of a single body, your physical body. Similarly, everything, the trees, plants, animals, mountains, houses, rivers, and beyond that came forth from the universal vagina, the yoni of the Divine Mother, are parts of a single body, your real cosmic body. Every distinct thing in this world can be referred to as Kala, as each is a part or portion of the whole. Everything emanates from the Divine Mother, known in Tantra as Kauliki Shakti, whom the Kaula Tantrics worship. Their ultimate aim is the realization that the entirety of the universe comprises their own vast body. Adi Suyash further writes, consider your body with its many organs and the millions of cells that form them, and then think about the countless microorganisms that are part of your body, necessary for its proper functioning. All these elements come together to form your body, and you recognize them as an inseparable part of yourself. Right now, you consider your body as yourself, and so these organs, limbs, and microorganisms constitute your identity. They are a part of yourself. So, why stop at the boundaries of our skin? Beyond our physical bodies, we are intimately connected to the trees, the earth, the sky, the sun, and everything in the universe. What prevents us from embracing oneness with the entire world? Why do we create divisions and boundaries? The Kaulas strive to break this boundary and include everything in their vast, expansive identity. The same idea echoes in the verses of Vedas, Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, or the entirety of existence is indeed Brahman, the absolute consciousness. Why then, the Tantric asks, do we make distinctions between the pure and impure? If everyone is absolute Shiva, then where does impurity exist? Why is there a division of purity and impurity? Who is considered untouchable? And whom should we shy away from? Therefore, they specially incorporate into their practice those things which are generally associated with a negative connotation or considered impure. By distancing ourselves from so-called negativity, as long as we are running away from something, feeling aversion, we cannot experience a sense of oneness. We will always live in duality, in separation, between me and the negative. Until we fully embrace that so-called negative object, how can we become one with this entire universe? This is the philosophy of Kaula Tantra. In this world, the nature, underlying reality of everything is consciousness. Chaitanya Matma, the first verse of the Shiva Sutra says, meaning consciousness is the self, the reality of all that is. The nature, the heart of everything remains the same. Thus there exists no difference in this world. And even if there is a difference, but the innermost self is the same, then what is the difference? The difference is superficial. A clay pot and a clay elephant, both are made of the same clay. The difference between them is the same as it is in you and everything else. This consciousness that unifies everything is termed as Kauliki Shakti in the Kaula tradition. There are several methods in the tantric tradition to achieve unity with this Kauliki Shakti, among which deity worship is the most common. It is a ritual through which the worshipper is deified. It is to establish oneness with the deity and consequently the entire universe. After ritually undergoing one's own death and dissolution, one recreates the world and oneself. In this act of creation, the deity is identified with the worshipper. The two are declared as one in essence. Deity worship in this sense is the worship of one's own inner essence, as well as a superior divine being. Alternatively, one could say that in this process, one venerates the highest or most essential nature, that is consciousness, which is united with the deity. The emphasis always lies in individual meditation and identification with the deity in question. Unlike temple worship, the goal is to inwardly realize the presence of the deity in the aspirant. Although this kind of worship perceives the deity to be both a superior being existing outside the practitioner and an inward dimension or aspect of the worshipper, the emphasis, particularly in comparison to temple worship, is on the latter. There are many variations of this ceremony, but we will attempt to understand their basic structure. David Kinsley, in his book The Tantric Visions of the Divine Feminine, the 10 Mahavidyas, describes the ceremony as having 4 parts: preparation, meditation, worship of the deity as the self, and concluding rites. The opening rites primarily aim to purify the adept and mark out a suitable place for the ceremony. The adept bathes, sips water, signifying internal purification, and asks the deity to rid his mind of any impurities. He also recites certain mantras at this point to expel potentially harmful spirits. The adept next purifies the place of worship by sprinkling water on the ground. he carefully inspects the items to be used in the ritual to be sure that they are unblemished. Flowers to be offered, for example, should be free from insects. Items are also purified by means of mantras and water. The adept then draws a yantra, a schematic diagram about which we have discussed in a previous video, representing the particular deity, in this case, the feminine energy to be worshipped. In the second phase of the ceremony, the adept performs a series of acts that are primarily mental to further purify himself. In general, this part of the rite aims at the adept's symbolic death and dissolution. The text says that the body is composed of impure elements such as mucus, feces, urine, and so on, and as such is unfit to be an instrument of worship. The adept's symbolic death is followed by his mental recreation of the world and, most important, by the appearance of the deity herself. Assuming the correct posture and practicing breath control, the adept begins a ritual that releases his life force, his jiva, from his body. He imagines his jiva passing through different stages, each connected with an element: earth, water, fire, air, and sound. Finally, identifying himself with space, he imagines his life force leaving his body through the top of his head. This signals his symbolic death. The adept then symbolically dissolves his body, which, as a microcosm of the universe, also represents the physical world as a whole. He imagines his body dissolving, then imagines it burning on a funeral pyre, then imagines the ashes blowing away, and finally imagines a shower of pure nectar cleaning the place where his body had lain and been burned. In effect, the adept has destroyed the cosmos and himself by reducing them to their elemental constituents. His ultimate purification is now complete, and he's ready to be reborn. Recreation of the cosmos and rebirth of the adept begins with the adept pronouncing the seed syllable or bij of the deity. He then visualizes the different parts of the cosmos, often in the form of letters, syllables, or mantras. He completes the recreation of the cosmos by visualizing the deity herself seated on a throne in the center of the world, which is imagined as her particular mandal. Next, he identifies himself with the deity by placing a flower that he has been holding in his hands on top of his head and saying, "I am this." The adept reinforces his deification with mudras or hand gestures and mantras that identify parts of the cosmos with parts of his body. Having provided himself with a new divine body actually identified with the deity herself, he is now prepared to undertake worship of the deity herself. This begins with inward worship, that is, the adept imagines the deity and her attendants dwelling in his heart. He pictures the deity by reciting her dhyan mantra, which often describes her in great detail. He then transfers the deity from his heart into the yantra he has drawn on the ground by exhaling through his right nostril onto a flower that he holds in his hand. Her transference to the yantra can also be done with mudras, hand gestures with which the adept catches the deity and places her in the yantra. The adept now praises the deity with hymns and treats her as an honored guest by offering her various articles, physically or mentally. The actions are similar to worship in a temple, but in contrast to elaborate and costly temple worship, in this ceremony, the adept offers the deity little more than purified water and flowers. The text instructs the adept throughout this part of the ceremony to constantly repeat the deity's special mantra, which is said to be identical with the deity herself. Outward worship of the deity in the mandal closes with a final offering, usually consisting of rice or some other grain. The adept may also make a blood offering. The adept now dismisses the deity by circumambulating the flower that represents her and mentally visualizing her return to her normal abode, heaven, the adept's heart, or some particular holy place. If the deity is visualized as returning to the worshipper's heart, the adept smells the flower that represents her, inhaling her, as it were, and then places the flower on his head. With the worship of the deity complete, he finishes the ceremony by raising the yantra or mandala and disposing of the remains of the offerings. The deities are also worshipped in a format known as the left-handed or Vamachara path in Tantrism. This type of worship is characterized primarily by the Pancha Makara ritual, the ritual of the 5 forbidden things. According to the Tantras, it is reserved for the few of heroic nature who are capable of undertaking it without harming themselves in the process. The practitioner must partake in 5 things that are ordinarily forbidden or are highly polluting: meat, fish, wine, mudra, a type of grain that may have hallucinogenic properties, and sexual intercourse with a woman who is not one's wife. The ritual is very dangerous and done under the guidance of a guru. The Tantra says the path of Tantra is as difficult as walking on the sharp edge of the razor. This path is fraught with dangers, similar to riding a tiger. The tiger is indeed a powerful vehicle, the king of the jungle, that is the world. If you can ride it properly, it will easily and efficiently lead you out of this jungle. But if you make a mistake, if you lose control of that tiger, you will become its prey. Perhaps that's why in scriptures, the goddess is depicted riding a tiger. The rulers of this jungle-like world are sex, power, greed, and addiction. These are extremely powerful forms of energy. Fighting against their influence is like steering a boat against the current. It will exhaust you and may even break the boat. Struggling against sex, for instance, suppressing it, gives birth to many psychological disorders. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, argued that when sexual desires were suppressed or repressed, they could manifest in various forms of psychological distress or neurosis. Freud viewed sexual repression as a societal and cultural phenomenon, where societal norms and moral standards imposed restrictions on sexual expression. He believed that these restrictions could lead to psychological conflicts and disturbances as individuals struggled to reconcile their natural sexual impulses with societal expectations. Many psychologists share this opinion. On the other hand, if we entirely succumb to our sexual desires, we lose our freedom. We will never rise above our body and mind. This presents a kind of dilemma. So what is the solution? Sex sublimation. And how does that happen? Tantra suggests that aspirants should perceive their sex partner to be completely their own. The man should see the woman as his own Shakti, and the woman should see the man as her own Shiva. They should cultivate a sense of identity with each other, a sense of non-duality. That is, each partner should intensely love each other. Love causes sex to be automatically sublimated. The entire sex act is transformed into love. Just as water, when heated, becomes vapor, sex is transformed by the fire of love into a profound sense of oneness. Slowly, this oneness engulfs the entirety of existence, and the purpose of the Kaulik practitioner is attained. Thus, the tantric or Kaulik way of life resolves the Freudian dilemma. But the mistake occurs when people begin to deceive themselves. They use spirituality as an excuse to indulge in sexual intercourse, and this leads to their own downfall. In the words of Richard Feynman, the first principle is to not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool. This holds as true in spiritual sciences as it does in physical sciences. It's very easy to deceive oneself in these practices, and when that happens, you fall further under the control of your animalistic tendencies. Then you become the prey of the very tiger you were trying to ride. The path of Tantra is indeed the most dangerous, but the danger is not from ghosts or demons. It is from oneself, from one's mind. That is why the need for a guru, the need for initiation is essential. We are very poor at judging ourselves subjectively. Our minds are experts at rationalizing our wrongdoings, so we often fail to see our own faults, to understand our own problems. Though we efficiently point out the mistakes of others, give them advice, but when it comes to ourselves, we become blind. Our intellect becomes clouded. Here the necessity of a guru arises, someone who constantly keeps an eye on you. A person can deceive himself, but not his guru. A genuine guru knows the nature of the mind. He has studied his own mind and transcended it, making him a great psychologist. One cannot deceive him. Secondly, when you engage with dangerous elements such as addiction, sex, or black magic, it's essential to have someone to guide and protect you from mistakes. Here, mistakes can be unforgiving. One wrong step and you'll sink deep into the quicksand of your bondages. One misstep and you may find yourself in a condition far worse than where you started on your spiritual journey.